There is something happening right now to homebuyers in Salem, Oregon, and it is catching people completely off guard. Their monthly payments are going up, they are jumping, and it's happening after they purchase their home. And it's because there are costs that are not anticipated or factored in before, during, and even after the home purchase. And it's not just one issue, it's multiple issues stacking up on each other that are just not being considered. There are Salem-specific traps and costs that are just not being considered, whether it's the micro markets here in Salem, Oregon, or the types of homes that people are buying. Then there is the actual payment shock, because when people are thinking of making their monthly payments, they're just thinking of the mortgage and maybe the mortgage interest, but not factoring other issues that we're going to talk about later in this video. And lastly, there is the obvious, homeowners insurance and taxes. But there are certain things in Salem that are not so obvious that you may not be used to from wherever you're moving from. And today, that's why I'm doing this video, to show you exactly what's happening here in Salem, Oregon to home buyers and how you can avoid being blindsided when purchasing your home. The first issue that needs to be addressed is the micro market trap here in Salem, Oregon, because where you buy could completely change your monthly payment. Now, when you're doing your research, you may come across the median home price here in Salem, Oregon, which right now is $425,000. And depending on your circumstances or where you're moving from, this could look like a great deal, especially when you're comparing it to cities like Portland, Bend, or Eugene, or if you're even thinking about Washington, you're comparing it to places like Seattle. Again, it looks like Salem has great value here. But when you consider your lifestyle, the type of home you're looking for, where you want to live specifically in Salem, these numbers, the price of homes, can vary dramatically. Let's break Salem down into 4 micro markets so you can have a better picture of what the median home price is in each of those sections. We're going to start off with West Salem with $475,000 as the median price. So you can see it's higher than the $425,000. Then we're going to move south, and south is even higher at $515,000 for the median home price there. Then if you're looking for a little bit less than North Salem, $422,000. And then closing it out with Central Salem, $349,000 median home price. So you can see the prices vary dramatically depending on what section of Salem you're thinking of. And also the demand. The demand of certain areas are higher, which is going to drive up more, the prices higher, and more competition. So when you're doing your initial calculations and your research of what you think your monthly payment's going to be, it's important not to just put in that $425,000 median price that you're seeing come up on sites like Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com. And it's more important to really go dive deeper, get more specific information about the neighborhoods and the micro markets that you're considering to move to in Salem, Oregon. And as we continue through this video, you're going to see how these micro markets not just affect the median home price, but other things like taxes and insurance. Before my family and I moved to Salem, Oregon, we did a lot of research. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of videos out there on YouTube before we made that move, and that's why I do these videos. I also am a licensed real estate agent here in Salem, Oregon. I've helped lots of people move to Salem and help them with their home purchase. As a reminder, I am Dave Fine with the Real Estate Dads at eXp Realty. If you are thinking about making that move to Salem and buying a home, hit me up at the contact information popping up or in the description below, and I'd love to have that conversation with you. Next, we really need to talk about payment shock because it is real. A lot of my clients, a lot of people that I help start off with their online calculations. They go online, find a mortgage calculator, and they base their costs of their median home price here that they find online, and they punch in a bunch of numbers. They think they know what the taxes are going to be. They think they know what the insurance is going to be, and they get a number, and it's in their mind. And as they come here and look at properties, and I'm informing them about the realities of what the payments are going to be, what the realities of taxes and insurance, it's a bit of a shock. And unfortunately, some of these buyers get shocked after the fact because property taxes change here. The insurance premiums can also change if certain things are not looked into before buying a property. And unfortunately for some buyers, they think their payment is one thing, and then by the end of their real estate transaction, by the time they purchase their home, it's a completely different number. And that's what we want to try to avoid here by understanding the real factors in the home purchase, the Salem specific information that is going to be shared in this video, so you can avoid some of these pitfalls and the costly surprises that can come from buying a home when not being fully informed. We're going to jump into what I call the insurance surprise, and it's not a good surprise. It is not pleasant. Premiums are rising, insurance companies are changing the way they administer policies, and all of this can come at a very big cost to you and a big shock if you're not aware of what's going on and even the type of property that you're buying. And later in this video, I'm going to share with you a huge trap that a lot of home buyers fall into, unfortunately, and it has a lot to do with the type of home that they're purchasing, and they're not even aware of what's going to happen later after the home purchase. We're going to jump into an issue that I call the insurance surprise, and it's not a good surprise. Insurance companies are getting stricter. They're changing the way they administer policies, and they're doing more due diligence even after the home purchase, which can come to you as a big surprise and add a lot more to your monthly payment that you weren't anticipating. Typically during the home buying process, a lot of home buyers make the mistake by waiting to the last minute to get their homeowner's insurance in place. And this occurs when they reach out to their policymaker, they answer a handful of questions online, and the insurance company issues the policy, and that's it. Nothing else is thought about. Unfortunately, that's a mistake. Home buyers need to anticipate that insurance companies are going to do their due diligence one way or another, and sometimes they do random surprise searches of your property. Not necessarily going inside, but they'll do drive-bys, or they'll even do a Google map search. And if they see things that they don't like, they're going to either cancel your policy or let you know what needs to be changed, fixed, and addressed, or they will issue that cancellation. And those changes and those fixes can be costly, and your insurance premium could go up based on their inspection after the fact. Now you may be thinking, how can you avoid this if you don't know what the insurance company is going to do after the fact? Well, there are plenty of things that you can look for when buying a home. A lot of the things that they're calling out right now here in Salem, Oregon are tree issues, whether these trees are hanging over the structure of the home, the roof of the home, or maybe they're near some power lines. Insurance companies are getting real strict about this and want that addressed in order to continue their insurance policy with you, or if you want to avoid any type of cancellation or any type of premium jump. Sometimes they'll even call out the condition of the outside of your home, the siding, some chipped paint, peeling paint, some rot that they'll just check on a random inspection. These can all be a factor. So if you know of these issues before closing the deal, these are things that are addressed at least during the escrow process, so you're not hit with a surprise later. Here in Salem, we have several historical neighborhoods with old homes. These homes are really cool craftsman, Victorian, bungalow-style homes, 100 years old or older. Now, there is a cool factor to that. However, they can become costly when it comes to insurance. Now, insurance companies ask questions like how old the roof is. They want to know the type of electrical system is in place. They want to know when the plumbing was redone, the HVAC system age. These are all questions that you're going to answer in one of their questionnaires. However, if they do their due diligence after the fact and they discover that the electrical systems are the old knob and tube, or if the roof is really, really old, or the HVAC system hasn't been updated in 30 years, well, they can go ahead and cancel your coverage, or they can demand fixes. Another insurance surprise that could happen for a lot of home buyers is being in a flood zone. We have a number of creeks that run along through Salem, Oregon, and if your home sits in a flood zone area, then you're going to have to get extra insurance, flood insurance, especially if you're getting a loan. And this could jump up your insurance premium by hundreds, if not $1,000 or a couple $1,000s. So this is something that you want to be aware about and not be shocked during the escrow process when all of a sudden your lender is going to require you an extra flood insurance binder. So it's important when you're looking through a home that you're keenly aware of some of these issues. It's important for your real estate agent to be aware of some of these issues. And if you're not so sure, we've got to ask the right questions to the home seller. Now, there is some protection in place for you as a home buyer. There is something what we call a suitability contingency. Now, this is something newer to the Oregon state contracts, but it's there to protect you as a home buyer. And it's also there to encourage you to get your insurance in place before it's too late. You have a certain amount of days, it is negotiable, it's in the contract, to find out who your insurance carrier is going to be, whether they're going to issue the insurance policy or not, and how much that insurance is going to cost you. And if you discover that the insurance is just going to be too high for this particular home, or maybe it's a house that insurance companies are just not going to offer an insurance binder on, then you can walk away from the deal and get your initial deposit back. Now, this section was added to the purchase agreement because it was becoming a bigger and bigger factor, and too many buyers were being caught off guard. And this is just an added protection, another level for home buyers to do their due diligence. And yet this is just one piece of the puzzle, because the next topic we're going to jump into is about property taxes. And again, this is something that's going to catch a lot of people off guard. The first thing that home buyers need to know about Salem is that Salem sits in two different counties. We have Marion County, which is pretty much all of Salem on the east side of the Willamette River. And then you have Polk County, which covers all of West Salem, which is west of the Willamette River. Now this matters because property taxes vary based on the county that you're in. In general, Polk County tends to have a little less in your property tax rate. But that's just part of the picture, because property taxes is a bit more complicated here in Salem, and we're going to dive into that and how that can affect your monthly payment and actually can catch you by surprise if you're not aware of how to calculate the property taxes when thinking about your overall monthly payment when it comes to your home purchase. The other thing you need to know is that property taxes will depend on whether you are sitting in the city limits or if your home is outside the city limits and into the county. In general, if your property is outside of the city, your property taxes are going to be less because you're not affected by some of the additional taxes that the city is going to tax onto you and onto your property. But now let's just jump into some of the details on how your property taxes are calculated, because again, if you're trying to go online and figure out what your monthly payment is using a mortgage calculator, you may be severely disappointed at how inaccurate that's going to be. And that's because you need to be aware of the Oregon property tax law here. In Salem and in Oregon in general, you cannot just calculate your property taxes based on the percentage of your purchase price. A lot of places across the country are like that. You have the home purchase price, and then you can calculate it by a certain percentage, and that's what your property tax is going to be. That is not the case here in Salem. You should be aware that your property taxes are most likely going to increase every single year. The good news is that in 1997, there was a measure that was passed in Oregon, Measure 50, that caps that increase to 3% every year. So what this does is it causes stability and predictability of what you can expect your property taxes that are going to be moving forward. Now you may be asking, well, how do you calculate the property taxes? And this is where it becomes property specific. In order to know what your property taxes are going to be for a home that you're going to purchase, you need to look up the specific property and see what the current taxes are, because your neighbor could have very different tax rate. Even though it's very similar home, similar size, similar condition, it could have a different value, a different tax rate than you. And so when you are calculating what your monthly payment is going to be, you need to do it based on each specific property that you're thinking of purchasing, not just a general calculation. Now that you have a general idea of how property taxes work here in Salem, Oregon, let's talk about how home buyers get caught off guard. Now, I mentioned that there is a 3% cap. However, there are caveats to that, and there are special reasons on why your property taxes could jump unexpectedly if you haven't done your due diligence as a home buyer. Now let's talk about how the county can reassess your property taxes and go above that 3% threshold. If you're buying a property that had recent improvements and were permitted, which hopefully they were, the county can find out that those improvements were made, whether it's a complete remodel of the kitchen, the bathroom, or just a complete renovation of the home. The county can go ahead and discover that during escrow or even after escrow and reassess your home value, which would then essentially increase your overall property taxes. The other thing to look for is if any homeowner has done any additions to the home, permitted additions. Again, hopefully they were permitted, and the county finds out during escrow or even after escrow, they can reevaluate your home as far as the value goes and bump up your property taxes. So it's important before you make an offer, or at the very least during escrow, you find out if there's been any recent permitted renovations that could potentially increase your value of the home in the county's eyes, which then would be increased in your property taxes, and you wouldn't really get that new property tax bill or that rate until after you close your deal. It does happen where home buyers are in escrow and they realize that there is a shortage when it comes to collecting the property taxes, and as a home buyer, you don't want to be hit by that. Or worst case is after you buy the property, you get a letter in the mail letting you know that your home value has been reassessed and now your property taxes have jumped. That is something that you definitely want to avoid if at all possible, and that comes down to doing your due diligence, making sure your real estate is helping you through this due diligence period, finding out if, again, any improvements have been made that the county is not aware of yet. I'm going to now jump into one of the biggest traps that home buyers fall into in Salem, Oregon, and that is the middle-age home trap. Now, I mentioned we've got a lot of areas where there are 100-year-old homes or older. Now, this is something to be aware of because we talked about how this can affect your insurance and the cost of doing some of obvious repairs like replacing old electrical, a very aging roof, and a lot of other things that can come with a older home. We also have a lot of new construction homes, which again, a lot of things are more obvious. But here's where a lot of home buyers fall into a trap, and that is the middle-age home. We are talking about homes that were built between 1990 and 2010. This is what I call the risky sweet spot, because a lot of these homes are going through their first wave or maybe their second wave of system failures. Now, as I mentioned, these older homes, maybe there's some expectations with system failures because you know they're older homes. Brand new construction, you're not really anticipating those types of system failures. But in these homes built during these years, this is where you feel like I'm buying a more updated home, a home that was built more recently. And on the surface, they look clean, they look well maintained. But what's hiding is what could very well potentially cost you thousands and thousands of dollars after the home purchase. For many of these homes built during this time, the roof is nearing its end of life. Same with the HVAC system and the water heater. And that's not counting some of the cosmetic updates that you may find on homes this age. Now, where this factors in, of course, you're going to get your home inspection. But during that home inspection, that home inspector may deem that the water heater is serviceable and the HVAC system is working. However, you know they're older and you know that there's only a couple years left. These are costs that you're going to have to anticipate after you buy your home. Now, if you haven't negotiated with the seller to get any type of credit or replacement, then again, this all falls on you and it's something that you're going to have to be aware of. And a lot of home buyers are excited during this home purchase process. They see that the inspector says, hey, they work, and they're not really considering what's coming down the road. And that cost could be just a year, 1-2 years, maybe even 5 years down the road, but they're coming. So if you have a roof that's older and you have an HVAC system and you have an aging water heater, one or all three of those could go out at the same time, and you have to be prepared financially to take care of those issues because you can't have a roof that continues to leak. You need an HVAC system, a working HVAC system here when living in Salem, Oregon. And of course, you're going to want hot water. So it's not like something that you can just push down the line like some sort of cosmetic repair or an update that you want to do. These are real needs that will affect your daily life and will affect you financially. And there is a reason why we call this the middle-age home trap, because it's just not something that's necessarily on your radar when you're looking at homes that were built during this time range. But it is something that should absolutely be factored in, something to be aware of before you make that offer. Find out if any of the systems have been replaced recently. And during escrow, it's very important that your inspector is doing the due diligence to figure out if those systems are operable and figuring out the age of these systems if the homeowner is not aware. Because you're not just buying a home. The reality is you could be also buying a timeline of upcoming expenses. Now, if I haven't scared you away from buying a home here in Salem, Oregon, again, that's not my goal. I just want you to be fully aware of what to be prepared for and how not to be blindsided. And that's why we're going to go over this checklist right now to best prepare yourself for any surprises that could come up along the way. The first is making sure you have a buffer in your finances. We want to make sure that you're not completely maxing out, going after the highest amount of mortgage that you can afford, because again, there are realities that could come up as a surprise during the escrow process or even afterwards, and sometimes they're just unavoidable. And that's why it's very important that you first sit down with your mortgage broker, with your real estate agent, and figuring out these numbers, the numbers that make most sense to you, being comfortable with your monthly payment. And it's more than just the mortgage payment and the interest. We've got to factor in the insurance, we've got to factor in the property taxes, and you've got to give yourself a buffer for anything that comes up repair-wise when buying a house. The next thing you want to do is make sure you look into insurance policies early on in the escrow process. In fact, you can even start before making an offer. You can call up an insurance company, give them the home address and any information that you have, and they can give you an idea of what that insurance binder is going to cost you. Especially if you're going to be buying an older home here in Salem, one of those homes that have all the charm in one of the historic districts. Insurance companies are even more strict with these types of homes. So again, you want to anticipate and get this information early on in the process so you can determine whether one, the home is going to be insurable, and two, whether you're going to want to pay for that bill that's going to come with some of these historic homes. We talked about property taxes, so you're going to want to do a deep dive into this. Again, it is property specific. I can't stress this enough. So if you are thinking about buying a specific home, make sure you have your real estate agent pull up the property taxes, or your lender pull up the property taxes and see what the current taxes are. Also, make sure you ask the right questions. Find out if there's been any permitted work, updates, upgrades to the home that have been made, any additions that have been made recently, things that could cause the county to reassess the home during the escrow process or even after the escrow process. We talked about middle-aged homes. Well, with any home that you purchase, you want to make sure you're investigating the systems. You want to find out how old the roof is, the HVAC system, the plumbing, the electrical, making sure you're looking at the foundation, because these are all costs that could come up by surprise later on down the road. And just because they're in good working order, which is a best case scenario, of course, when you're buying a home, you don't want things to be inoperable, but you also have to factor in the age. You could have a roof that is working, but if it is 20, 25 years old, you know that roof can go at any time. Same with your HVAC system and your water heater. They could be working during that home inspection. The homeowner, the seller of the house has had no issues, but you know if that system is nearing the end of its life, that at any time you're going to be on the hook for replacing that system after you purchase the home. And this is where really doing your own due diligence, but also making sure that you're working with a real estate agent that is in your corner, helping you with your due diligence, asking the right questions, guiding you in the right direction so you can make a much better informed decision, because this is all trying to avoid the traps that we have here in Salem, all trying to avoid the surprises that come with home ownership. We do our best to avoid these issues, but again, it comes down to making sure you have enough buffer in your savings, wherever you're holding your money, to deal with any of these surprises that come down the road. And if you follow these guidelines with this checklist, you will be way ahead of many home buyers that come here to Salem purchasing a home that are not aware of some of these issues when moving here. I do these videos to help you as a home buyer thinking about making the move to Salem, Oregon, because I was in your shoes. I uprooted my family. We moved here to Salem from Los Angeles. It was a big move. We did our research, but there just wasn't a lot of information out there, especially on YouTube, and that's why I make these videos about what it's like to live in Salem, purchase a home here in Salem, so it can help better guide you during that process. And as a reminder, I'm Dave Fine with the Real Estate Dads at eXp Realty. If you're thinking about buying a home, make sure you're going to hit me up at that contact information popping up or in the description below. I'd love to hear from you and help you with your home buying journey in Salem.